Okay, do you have any favorites you want to take?
I want to take Dakota.
All right, let's take Dakota.
So you start talking, I will do my movie magic.
All right, and in the meantime, I'll say that we've got a lot of atheists on the line, and we'd love to have more theists. So if you're a religious caller, you want to talk to us about what you believe and why, call 585-526-8774. That's 585-LaMurph, or go to tiny.cc/callsg. And you can get on the line with us and talk to us about what you believe and why. But in the meantime, we're talking to Dakota in Wisconsin. Dakota, can you hear us?
Hey. Yes, I can. How are you two doing? Nice to talk to you, Eric and V.
Yeah,
doing
nice
well.
to talk to you as well.
Drank almost all my coffee.
Oh, I still have so much left.
So I'm doing well. What did you want to talk about?
I wanted to talk about being a skeptic towards capitalism and our economic system.
Ooh.
And similarly, how religion is the norm, and I feel like it is more questioned than capitalism. But we basically just, at least in the United States, for sure in the United States, have been indoctrinated from a very early age, taught American exceptionalism, and no one really questions, not a lot of people, not enough, our economic mode. And feel like it's something to be skeptical about. There's a lot of flaws, a lot more than the benefits, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
It relates to everything.
I definitely agree that especially in the US, I can't speak for other countries, but Christianity and capitalism have been very intentionally and very effectively intertwined. The book In God We Trust by Kevin
Absolutely.
Krause, I believe, or Kevin Kruse, is so good. And it talks about the moment that essentially the big power brokers of capitalism in the 50s got together and explicitly said in a conference, we are going to tie our business to Christianity so that when people question one, they question the other, and that will not be acceptable. So it's not just a theory, Dakota. You are spot on. This is accurate, and it's intentional. So I absolutely think we should be applying skepticism to that as well.
Maybe you can both help me here. Mm-hmm. Let's walk through this just a little bit. When you say you're skeptical of capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're convinced it exists.
Fair.
I'm sure what?
I'm sure you're convinced it exists.
Oh, absolutely.
So what the fuck are you talking about?
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
Yeah, skeptical that it is the only way for an economic means of production, the only way that we can establish our society, or that it is the best way. And that, as soon as someone brings up, Karl Marx or Vladimir Lenin or anybody else, that you're kind of,
Dakota.
Shush. And yeah.
So you're a dirty communist.
Absolutely.
Because it's one or the other. I'm sorry.
Cheers.
Oh, you know what? Okay, now I'm on board. I was wondering, why are we? I know it's a thing that exists. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not skepticism of it as a concept. It's skepticism of it being
a moral good or a moral necessity,
or the only way
or
a thing can be done.
Superiority, or that it is only benefit. This is the only beneficial way. When in reality, it's only beneficial for, maybe the top 10% of the people that exist on the planet,
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So can I ask Dakota,
And it's not talked about.
what kind of got you, because for me, there were many steps towards me becoming skeptical of the version of capitalism that is practiced in the US and whether or not it was A, good for people, and B, the only way to do things, because those are not necessarily the same thing, right? There could be things that are terrible for people, but unfortunately the only way things can be right now. For me, it started very much with listening to activists in that scope, but also seeing that specific tie to Christianity, and especially a very Americanized version of Christianity. So for you, what was the penny drop to kind of start you thinking about this? Because one thing I would love to talk about on this show more is not just, hey, I'm skeptical about this thing. Why are you? What got you there? What were those breadcrumbs that led you to start questioning this?
Yeah, so I guess I, more or less a skeptic for most of my life, probably elementary school age. It just on the news, seeing poor, starving people in, the global south, other countries, that geographically aren't any different than the United States, they can grow food there, is what I'm trying to say. And there's no reason why they should be starving over there. And we have the technology, we have the land, we have the resources. Why are people starving? It doesn't make sense. And I said that as a little kid. And later on, I was like, well, no one can make money by curing, starvation and world hunger. So it doesn't get solved. And then, later on, as I, became an adult and thrown into, the system, and with different financial crises and the merge of Bernie Sanders, someone being able to say, I'm a socialist, as much as someone could say Bernie's a socialist, to argue he's still a capitalist, and arguing for more social programs in the United States, which are great.
Yeah.
But a Band-Aid, a start. But yeah, and then, just seeing those flaws in our system and how there's so many contradictions, and they're so blatant in your face that there's some real atrocities that are happening across the globe, and there's some real obvious answers to how they can be fixed, and they're not, because our economic mode and people in charge of that want to preserve their place, or in this hierarchy, they resist change, and those are the stopping forces from anything changing for the better. And so it's been a process, but just looking at things as an early age, and seeing the flaws in them and how easily they could be corrected, and all the way up to the pandemic and
right.
People
Well, I think
losing their jobs.
I am mostly in agreement with the end goal, Dakota. Honestly, I am. I would probably also be called a dirty communist by most people, even though I don't necessarily think that's where I stand. My concern is that this does, and I know this is a call-in show, we put you on the spot. I don't think it's actually as easy to fix as we think that it might be. And I don't think it because we don't have the technology. We absolutely do. It's the humans that are the problem here, right? Eric, I saw you going like,
multiple times.
Yeah. Give me your thoughts.
Sure.
We were correct. We were like admonished by somebody who said the couple dynamic is cute, but it doesn't work because you always agree with each other. So,
I disagree with you all the time.
all the time. We're just nice about it.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so oh my gosh, I know I've talked about it on the other show that we were on, but I haven't really brought it up here, and I think it's worth bringing up so that we can, use this moving forward. I'm getting stuck on the monkeys.
Uh-huh.
And for people who haven't heard me talk about this before, I'll sum it up really quickly, as quickly as I can.
Sum up capitalism super quick.
No. This concept of getting stuck on the monkeys. I had an argument with a really, really good friend. I was talking to them about infinity, and trust me, this relates. I was talking about the infinite monkey hypothesis. Have you heard of that one, Dakota?
Not infinity, yes. Infinity monkeys, no.
Yeah, so the idea is if you were to take an infinite number of monkeys in an infinitely large room and give them all typewriters and give them an infinite amount of time, eventually you'll wind up with the collective works of Shakespeare. Right? Yeah, you've heard that. Yeah. And it kind of helps you wrap your mind around the concept of infinity. And so I was explaining to a friend this, and he looks at me and he goes, but no. I was like, okay, maybe I said this wrong. So I said it again. He goes, well, but you're wrong. And I was like, no, this is a thing. And we argued about it for hours. And finally, what he was trying to say is this, that as you get further and further out, as you approach infinity, which doesn't really make sense, there's no where you're approaching, but you know what I mean, the further and further you go out, the odds of it not happening become infinitely small. But it never becomes zero. It becomes effectively zero, right? But somewhere after the 0.000 bar, there's a theoretical one there. And you can't pretend that that's not there. When I was telling him you're going to wind up with the infinite, the collected works of Shakespeare, he said that there's a chance, no matter how small, no matter how, there's still the chance that that one thing wouldn't happen. And all I needed to do was say, sure, but it's vanishingly small and falls well within the margin of error to not, And he goes, yeah, absolutely. I just wanted you to recognize that. But, and then he agreed with me and we were done. Like, we had a multi-hour conversation. As soon as he got the affirmation, we were solid. Right. And so I find myself getting stuck in the monkeys. I think lots of people do with different subjects, right? They need that little bit of affirmation to recognize that, okay, this point is solid and we can move forward. And so as you're talking about it, I was getting stuck in the monkeys on that. I was thinking, okay, so long as we're understanding there's a lot of implications there, that there is something to be said about personal ownership. There is something to be said about where capitalism does benefit things. There's something to be said about drawing lines between socialism, communism, capitalism, and fascism. And when we take those things into account, we find that we work very well when there's a mix of those things, that we're, diving into that gray area and finding what works best for the culture and society that is engaging in those things, and what the ultimate goals of those societies are for themselves and for others. And in doing that, we find that when we mix and match and find what works best, and, put more emphasis on the well-being of, or at least raising up the standard of living so that suffering is not an option. People can do better or worse, but that doesn't mean that you're suffering or dying because, you know what I mean? That's just how low the bar goes. So if you agree with that, I'm down. But as you're both talking about it, I feel like I was taking in my implications of a whole lot of absolutes there. And I think...
yeah. I agree with what you're saying for sure. Big part of Marxism is thinking dialectically, that things are in a constant flow from it itself and its opposite and back and forth. So the existence of capitalism means the existence of socialism, and back and forth it is a fighting force. And I'm just saying where we are at right now in society is, like you said, there's too much suffering. And I would point people to the example of China. China is doing socialism with Chinese characteristics. They are meeting the needs of their people and with their societal cultural norms, and they also have billionaires, but they also have a third of their companies are state-owned and run, and they are working their way with this socialism with Chinese characteristics to communism, but fascism. They are working with different modes of production to get there.
And fascism.
Fascism being how do you describe, or how would you tell me that China is
pretty
fascist?
Intense human rights violations happening in China.
Yeah,
currently.
And again, like Uyghur populations, and
in the same way.
I would have you guys look into that. That there's a lot to be said about what's happening to the Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region. And probably a lot of tanky comments in the chat right now. But like I said, capitalism is a powerful force, and I think there's a lot of disinformation out there. And if you look at where these genocide or cultural genocidal claims
Dakota,
of the Uyghur population in Xinjiang are coming from, you'll poke holes in it. And I don't want you to, on the call
No. That affirmation
call yourself a genocide denier or anything like that. It's a big claim. I want you to do the research for yourself, but I'm just saying it's out there. And that, it's worth looking into.
Yes, you give me, that gives me permission to explore.
He was saying it probably wasn't happening in the way that we think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Regardless, I'm still excited that what he's doing is acknowledging there are multiple things there that we need to look into, and that it's not a one or the other situation. It's not black or white, because when we just focus on black, then we imply that there's nothing on the other side of that. Okay, I didn't realize that was where we went. I was so excited thinking about the first thing.
One is better than the other, or one is causing all this harm.
Thank you, V.
Well,
that would have been taken. Someone would have taken that clip of me, and it would have been terrible.
Yeah.
They still will, I'm sure.
They will.
Okay.
So here's the deal. In the same way that we had the conversation around veganism, and don't talk about health benefits if you're trying to talk about the morality of a thing. Don't talk about the economics of it if you're trying to talk about the health benefits. Like, there are different aspects of each concept to consider. If we're talking about the effectiveness of capitalism versus the effectiveness of socialism, that's a separate conversation from whether or not they are beneficial or humanistic or moral. And we need to be able to balance all of those to get to a place that is the most effective and the most humane, I think. And the thing that I'm pushing back on is not saying capitalism is the worst of all of those. What I'm saying is right now we are being held hostage as a country by people who don't allow us to find the best way forward. And that is why people think that I am a socialist. It's not because I have done the work and think that socialism is the best of all options. I can't say that for sure. What I can say is that we are not currently allowed to find out, and that is the problem.
Exactly. At least let us try. There's a lot of socialist experiments that have happened in the 20th century, and have come and gone and failed, and there's been good things that we've learned from them, and there's some bad things, the black book of communism and millions of deaths and things that they want to put in our face. And I don't want to do whataboutisms, but there's a book of capitalism with all the deaths that it causes as well. But yeah, at least let us try and figure this out, because clearly what we have now isn't working. But
at this point, I think an economist and somebody with credentials in that would be wonderful to have on, so we can have a more detailed conversation, because I'm now at a point where I'm going to be talking out of my butt.
Yeah. At this point, all we can advocate for is, being skeptical about things by figuring out, are there other ways to look at this, and which ways are backed up by the science, whether that's hard science like biology or economics or social sciences.
Philosophy.
And philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay. Dakota, we're going to have to move on, I think. But...
Could I bring up one topic about the pride that you were talking about last week in the parade and stuff, and how this kind of relates?
You can bring it up. We'll probably drop and then continue talking about the point. But yes, feel free to bring it up.
Just one of the things that you're talking about, where this conversation started, I can't help but imagine that it started with the popularization of the pride and the pride parade, and how it's being corporatized. And they want to monetize and profit from this, making it family friendly, making it, not kink and stuff like that, and to make money. And I know that there's kink shamers and transphobes that are also a part of this conversation, but I think that's where it stems from. And and I didn't hear that brought up. I don't know if you have in tweets or other comments, but I just wanted to bring that up. Same with the veganism and what you can afford and what you can't. That all derives back to our economic mode. And you can't have conversations about morality without having conversations about this.
Cool. Well, thanks for bringing that up, Dakota.
Yeah.
And thanks for calling in.
Take care.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think that absolutely plays a part. I think probably not the 4chan hijackers who try to upset Pride every year. They're probably not being paid off by big Coca-Cola or whatever. But I think that a lot of people have seen Pride become corporatized and become streamlined and mainstream. And I think that there are some benefits to that, because certain kinds of queer people get attention. The downside is that the trade-off is, and I've seen people talk about this even this last week, pride is supposed to be a representation that gay people can be respectable too. And I'm like, God, what? You not, it's so frustrating. But the point is, yes, on the one side, yay, we're kind of mainstream a little bit. If we subscribe to certain stereotypes and ways of being, and are we willing to give that our allegiance if it means throwing people who are in the same community who don't present in a certain way under the bus?
I don't know if that's what I've seen the conversation as.
I've definitely engaged with this on Twitter.
You definitely have. I guess sitting back, it looks to me, at least from where I'm sitting, that there are people wondering, well, what is the goal for Pride to me? And the goals between people who are in the same community are different. Mm-hmm. And because of that, there's that strong push. Is this about, hey, we've been protesting, we're going to keep protesting, and I am who I am, and this is showing that, and this is pride in that. That's pride. Is it moving into a mainstream place where, you got to, kind of whitewash away all of the things that, made you an individual? And
I think a big part of that is do what you want to do. No one's telling you to do anything different or feel any differently. It's just don't put that on other people, especially with a moral compunction.